So you can have the yeah.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for the introduction, Niklesh. That's great. Hi, as I said, I'm Sukesh. In our today's presentation, we're going to give a knowledge about this particular lineups. Let me share my screen quickly. Yeah, oh, sorry. Okay. So these are the lineups we're going to discuss about. If anything piques your interest among them while we are discussing, please raise your questions in the chat. Or if you would like to discuss more about that, we'll always be available in offline or LinkedIn. You can always reach us. I'll suggest after this session, I'll definitely suggest, please go and explore the topic so that you can get a good grip. And what we exactly intend for this meeting is most of the developers or most of the technical folks are really struggling using a UiPath automation. Everybody knows UiPath Test Suite family and how to work with that. And when it comes to actual development, the important question will rise in every developer's mind, like how to start this, first of all, how to work with any project. If a developer completed his RPA automation, how I'm going to start building a test cases, or how I'm going to produce any evidence to the test cases. So these questions we are going to discuss today, actually. So this will be completely entertainable because we're going to discuss live project and we're going to develop test cases, etc. and etc. But first, I'm going to give a chance to Vijay to start with his content about the UiPath Test Suite. Thanks, Vijay. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Sukesh. So in this session, we will learn a brief overview in theory of what UiPath Test Suite is, what are the different products which we use, right? How to use them, right? And then later we will have a live demo in which we will showcase the RE framework, how to utilize it, right? How to create test cases, how to publish those test cases and execute them as well. At the end, we will have a specific time dedicated for Q&A. But if you still have any questions, you can just put them in the chat window. Yeah. Yeah, Sukesh. Yes, thank you. So here, as we can see, we will talk about the different products which we have. So the first section, which talks about manage testing and analyze results, will correspond to the test manager. So UiPath Test Suite has overall 4 components. One is the test manager, second one is the Studio Pro, third is orchestrator, and fourth one is test robots. So UiPath Test Manager allows us to manage testing and analyze results in a way. So it integrates with the existing third-party ALM tools like HP ALM, Micro Focus ALM, Octane, Jira, TFS, TestRail, ServiceNow, etc. So Test Manager has the capability to integrate with these third-party tools and then synchronize the requirements and test cases, right? So apart from that, we can also create standalone requirements and standalone test cases and perform testing in Test Manager itself as well. Now comes the Studio Pro, which is the second component. The Studio Pro allows us to develop our automations. It could be the process automations or it could be test automations. Studio Pro is the most advanced IDE, which allows us to create, or which adds on the functionality of creating test cases. So UiPath has 3 different IDEs suited for 3 different group of people. The first one is Studio X, then we have Studio, and then we have Studio Pro. Studio X is dedicated for the people who are into or who are citizen developers or business developers. They do not need technical knowledge of how to create automations. They do not need to know what are variables, arguments, etc. But they'll still be able to leverage Studio X to create their automations. Studio is what we traditionally use for our process automation, and Studio Pro is the most advanced IDE, which adds on the capabilities of RPA testing as well as application testing. Studio Pro integrates with Test Manager and Orchestrator. Now comes the third component, which is the Orchestrator. This is a place or this is the tool which allows us to manage everything, all the automations, right? It could be process automations or test automations, and then it allows us to schedule them as well. So then we have the fourth component, which is the test robots. Test robots are similar to unattended robots, but these are specifically built to execute test cases. They'll not be able to execute the different process automations or processes, but specifically designed to execute test cases. UiPath Test Suite allows us to create production grade automation with artificial intelligence and orchestration. And we bring all of these together into testing. Usually, traditionally, when we talk about testing, we are dealing with automations which are created in dev or test environment. But Studio Pro allows us to bring this to production as well, in a way, because when we deploy bots or processes, we are talking about deploying them into production. So whatever we create through UiPath is perfectly capable of being deployed into a production environment. Right? And similarly, the test cases which we create are also production grade, right? So in a way, we can create process automations, process testing, and test automations which are production grade. We can automate any user interface or API technology. So UiPath Test Suite allows us to automate to interact with web applications, desktop applications, mobile applications, different APIs, SAP, terminals, or mainframes, etc. So UiPath gives us the capability to automate any user interface and any API technology, right? So we do not have to create or do not have to leverage multiple tools to perform multiple automations. We can have a single tool which is capable of creating or automating all the applications which are available in the organization. UiPath allows us to share and reuse automations at the enterprise level. So UiPath has object repository, as well as it allows us to create libraries, which we can share and reuse. So this share and reuse feature can be applied in a project team or in an entire organization as well. The way we can share it is through libraries. So UiPath allows us to create libraries which can be published as a package, and this package can be leveraged by others in the organization as well. Then, as I said, Test Manager integrates with the existing ALM tools in the organization. So it seems the UiPath Test Suite, the product in its entirety, can be integrated or can be stitched into the DevOps pipeline, which is already used in the organizations. UiPath Test Suite also integrates with Jenkins and Azure CI/CD for continuous development and continuous integration. Yep. Now let's talk about the benefits, right? How it will benefit us. So in an organization, we have RPA, or we have processes which are being currently used in production. We have applications which are in the development phase, right? And then we have leaders, right, who wants to deliver maximum value at minimum cost. UiPath Test Suite gives benefits across all of these group of people or group of teams, right? So UiPath allows the RPA teams to create processes. These processes would be more resilient, and we can continuously monitor the health of these processes through Orchestrator. Using the latest selectors or anchor-based selectors and fuzzy selectors in UiPath allows us to create the automations which are more robust and also capable of handling minor changes automatically without updating or manually updating the selector or fixing the selector. So what it does is, when we use object repository and fuzzy selectors, it allows us to minimize the maintenance which we are doing in the process automation. And this way it benefits the RPA teams to maximize their return of investment or maximize the output of the process automation. UiPath Test Suite also allows us to create test cases for process automation. So in a way, we are testing the processes which we have automated as part of RPA, and through that we are ensuring that the bots or processes which we have created are more robust and reduces the maintenance part of it. Now coming to the testing teams, right? As we discussed earlier, UiPath Test Suite is capable of RPA testing as well as test automation or automation testing. So traditionally, the testing teams will be using different tools to automate their applications or automate their processes and create test cases, and then executing those test cases to ensure that whatever they have automated is working as expected or not. UiPath Test Suite, out of the box, along with the existing capabilities, it adds on the testing capabilities, and it allows the testing team to move away from being a cost center and become a value center. Then the transformation leaders, because now we have a single tool which not only allows us to perform process automation, but test automation as well. And along with it, it has the ability to reduce the maintenance which we are doing. And this gives us a lot of value and allow the transformation leaders to deliver maximum efficiency with minimizing the cost and risk at the enterprise level. Now, here we have a product mapping. So we have two groups. One group is a business analyst or a manual tester. The other group is a RPA developer or a test automation developer or test developer or an IT professional. So we have the different tasks which they would be doing, right? A business analyst or a manual tester would either manage process or manage test cases. They would gather the requirements. They would be creating a functional requirement document when we are talking about a tester, or they would be creating a process definition document or a PDD when we are talking about a business analyst. So gathering the requirements and designing it are the tasks which are associated with a business analyst or a manual tester. RPA developer, test developer, or IT professionals, right? They are basically automating their IT tasks or automating the processes or test cases, right? Their tasks are to build the automation and then deploy the automation where it is necessary. But across both the user groups or both the roles, there is a necessity of testing it. So whatever we are automating, when we are talking about RPA developer, test developer, or IT professional, whatever we are building or whatever we are deploying, we need to test it to ensure that whatever we have developed is working as expected. And when we are talking about manual tester, they have to test the functionality or test the process in a manual way to ensure that it is working as expected. So UiPath Test Suite with the components allows us to cater to both of these groups. So UiPath Test Manager will allow us to create and gather requirements, create test cases or design test cases, and then testing them. Task Capture allows the business analyst to document, or for the documentation purposes, whenever they are creating PDDs or gathering requirements or designing a specific as-is or identifying an as-is process. Now, UiPath Studio Pro will allow the RPA developer, test developer, or IT professional to automate the process which they want to automate or which is expected to be automated, and then Orchestrator will allow them to deploy it in a specific environment. Now, adding the testing, so Studio Pro will now be able to create test cases, and Orchestrator will be able to Orchestrator will allow them to manage or to execute those test cases from Orchestrator or scheduling them at a specific day or point of time. And then we have the test robots, which are basically dedicated for executing these test cases, which will be developed through UiPath Test Suite. Now, here we are talking about the different roles and responsibilities. So we have basically segregated our roles and responsibilities across three groups. One is the admin, then the developer, and then the tester. The role of an admin is to design test cases and test sets. So basically what they would be doing is, in the test manager, they will identify what requirements we have to test, and they will create requirements in test manager and then create corresponding test cases for those requirements. The requirements could be for automation testing, or it could be for process testing as well. They will handle the test manager in its entirety, and then they will also monitor the status of each test case. So when we have executed the test case, in test manager we have a dashboard module where all the different KPIs we have built in would be visible, and the and the admin can look at those dashboards, and then they will be able to give us the matrices which are required to assess the project or the automation health. Then we have the developer role. The developer would be building the automations, right? So they would be automating the processes, or they would be automating a functionality or test case, right? They will be able to, or they will be capable of creating unit test case, creating unit test, and unit testing the component or process which they have developed, and as well as to ensure that the functionalities on which they are working as expected. And if there are any changes, UiPath Test Suite integrates with code management systems like we have Git, Tortoise, SVN, DFS, etc. So it would be integrated with those source code management repositories, and any changes can be tracked easily. Then we have the tester. So they are mainly focused on developing test cases using Studio Pro, right, or creating test cases through requirements in test manager, right, and then creating the linkage. So any point of the time when we are doing a testing, right, it's very paramount to have a requirement traceability. That is, what are the requirements, what are the test cases associated with what requirements, and what are the results of those test cases. So to ensure that this traceability is put together, we have to link the requirements and test cases in test manager. The tester would be, it would be a task of the tester user group. And then we can schedule the execution of these test cases or test sets through Orchestrator. We have a test scheduling module where we will be able to schedule these. So these are the different roles and responsibilities, right? Now I'll hand it over to Sukesh so that he can take us through the detailed demo. Sukesh, over to you.
Thanks, Vijay. Thank you so much for this educative introduction. This is really quite a summary. Hi guys, like I said, now we're going to see a live demo. And a bit contradict to the live demo, I'm going to play these three roles here. I'm going to work like an admin, I'm going to work like a developer and tester. Hope you can understand the difference. Okay, so let's start with admin. What admin can do, as Vijay just explained, he is the responsible who manages the test case. Test case is nothing but what test we are going to perform and what are all the different information we need to build a test case to the tester, that information collected from the developer. So as an admin, I have a privilege to use test manager. So now this is, so once you get access for the test manager and UiPath Studio Pro and Test Robot, first thing you need to do, you need to create a project in the test manager. So this is the project which I have already created called SAP ME. So once how to create that, let me just quickly show you that. Go to home page and you can just create your new project by entering a name, and if you want to give any prefix to find out your project in more convenient way, you can give it. So you want to describe your process, what actually the functionality is going to do, you can go and create it here. So let's take my project which I already created. Yep. Now after you created a project, go to the requirement. Now I'm an admin. Now as an admin, I need to create the requirements. Now I need to create the requirements one by one. First one, as my process goes along with that. Now if you see here, there are 4 different workflow. Now as an admin, I supposed to know on which way the process flow will take, like which XAML file will execute first and which the following XAML files also I need to get it from the developer. First thing, deleting file. So let me just create SAP deleting files. So my requirement name is deleting files and description is deleting already existing files, bracket, input and output files. Define folders. Sorry for the errors. Now, which XAML file I'm going to call? The name of the XAML file, deleting existing file. Existing file dot XAML and input slash output args if there is anything. Let me just quickly see this one. Yep, in config underscore config, which is dictionary string comma object and expected output finally. So what is the expected output? Input and output files should get deleted before process even start. Now let's create it here. Likewise, you need to create for each and every XAML file, or you can say each and every test case is defined by your QA lead or COE lead. Here, let me just take a create SAP login. Now in the description panel, I'm going to create SAP login, get credentials from the asset administrator, get login. Credentials. Okay. Now call with XAML file is SAP underscore login. Say ML input and output arguments are, is there anything in config which is mandatory? I know that because I have developed this process, like I know that, but in an admin case, admin has to ask which arguments are mandatory, which arguments are not mandatory. In username is optional, already know. In password is also optional. As a time being, I'm not just entering any types and mandatory things, but in your case, please fill as much as information as possible. Expected output, successful login screen. Okay, now let's create one more requirement for MEATFN. MEATFN. Let me just copy it. I'll just edit it. MEATFN. Export the data from the SAP manager using code MEATFN. Post login. So for that, I'm calling MEATFN module. Input and output arguments, I think is in config only. Yep, in config. So let's just keep it like this. Expected output exported data, save in input folder, input data folder, name export.xaml. Cool. Now we have created the requirement. Let's go with the test cases. Create the test case for one by one, whatever requirement you have created. Repeat the same steps in test case also. So first thing is for SAP deleting file, and you need to create in the same order, which I'm just creating, or the process required thing. The version, I'm just giving a version may. So this version number could vary one client to other client. Please make sure that one. So description, since I already gave a description in the requirement, I'm not going to give anything here. So let's just create here. So now I create a deleting file. Let's create for the SAP login and 1.0 and create a test case for MEATFN 1.0. Cool. Now go back to the requirements, and we need to connect these requirements with these test cases. That's how the connection will be established. Now go to the click inside deleting file. Here, if you see the option, you go to the assign test case. Now in SAP deleting, I'm going to select the assign and go back and repeat the same steps for the SAP login also. SAP login, task, assign task, SAP login, assign it. And one more thing, MEATFN, task, assign test case, MEATFN. Now, the admin work is almost half of the admin work is completed. Now, my profile is switching from the admin to the tester. Now, the tester is going to build the test cases by using a Studio Pro. So how he can develop the test cases here? Let me just close all the existing files on the screen. Okay, before you going to build any test case, if I were you, I will do that like this. Go to the folder. I will create a separate folder for the test cases which I'm building because of the code maintenance. Now let's just create a test case here. Inside that, whatever test cases you're going to perform, whatever type of test cases you're going to perform. Now I'm going to show unit test cases, and I'm going to perform functional test cases. In your case, you might work with regressions and etc test cases, but now I'm going to stick with these two things. So if you refresh here, you can see this folder. Now I do not have any test cases here. So let's just go to the business flow. Now let's create a workflow for the one by one. So now I'm going to work for the unit test case. Unit test case is nothing but you're going to test a portion of the entire process or a unit of the entire process. So this unit test case mostly performed by the developer side. So whenever any functionality like a login, like a deleting files, anything you developed as an RPA developer and you wanted to test by using a Studio Pro to make sure it's efficiently working or not, how to do that? Like this. Now consider I'm the developer here. Now I created this particular XAML. Now I want to test it. How to do that? Just right click it and create a test case. Give a proper name, unit test case underscore 001. Now this is my naming convention format. If you wanted to change a bit way, no problem, but make sure you giving in a chronological order, numbering order. Please make sure I'll give you the reason why we need to maintain a numbering system here. So okay, 001, let's just say delete files, create it. Now you can see these three sections here: given, when, then. Given is the section where you perform all the input related actions. For example, you want to gather an input to pass deleting files. In my case, deleting file requires config as an in argument. So that operation I'm going to perform in the given section. In some scenarios, you might need to open an application on the screen or open the session, keep it on on screen so that you can perform a multiple operations. So everything, every prerequisites, input gathering, everything you will perform inside this given section. When is where you call the actual functionality by using invoke functionality purpose, and then is for the validation purpose. So whether your workflow is completely validated, it's successful or a failure, or there is some exception, anything, everything will be handled inside the then section. So let's just go to the given section. Now in my case, now I need an in config. So do I need to build a workflow for the read the config file and get the asset value? No. Why? Because I have already provided with UiPath already provided me a workflow to read the data. If you go to main, see this particular workflow giving me output config file. So I'm going to reuse this config file section. So now input config, let's just create a simple, let me name config. Let's just make it global variable so that I can be accessible in when section. Now you created in the given section. So if you want to access inside the when section, the same way arguments, you need to make it as a global. Okay, now, yep, it's automatically took. Save it. Now if you run, it will first read the configuration file, then pass the input config arguments to the deleting existing file. It will delete all the operations. Now let's just go to the data input. Okay, there is no files here, so it will obviously create this one. Now go to this then section. Before that, I forgot to mention that if you want to access any testing related activities, you need to install UiPath.testing.activities here. Without this, you don't see any UiPath testing activities. Cancel it. Once you install, you will see the separate tab. It's already defaultly available on the screen. The whole testing activities are classified into two parts. One is a data, and the one is a verification. In the verification section, you will see the three different expression. My favorite expression is verified expression. So this will tell you whether your test case is successfully completed or not. So how to do that? Now, if you go back to the requirement, I need to read the requirement here very carefully. So what is the expected output? Input and output file should get deleted before process even start. So that's it. I need to check whether the file is available on the folder or not. For that, check file. Path exists, sorry. Okay. Now I need to check two files, right? Input and output files. So for that, now I need to give a file path. Do I need to specify the file path in a hard-coded way? No, you should not do that one. If the file path is already exist in the configuration file, why don't we reuse that? I'm sure the file paths are captured from the config file. So I'm going to this data part and make sure the name of the config file. Since you have access for the entire whole project, you can see the config file. If you have input file path and output file path, please reuse that instead of hard coding a value. Yep. See, now I have got this file paths here. Let's just go to this file path and name it. And the same thing. File path. Let me quickly create a variables for that, where file path Please don't mind about the naming. Now, if these files are exist, which means my test case failed, it didn't deleted the folder. So let's just look for the, sorry, verify expression attribute operator. So it will check that input file path is false and my expression operator output file path is false. If it is a false, then only my test case is successful. The path should not exist on the screen. So let's just run this file. Now I built a simple vanilla test cases. I haven't added any conditional workflows. Okay, so it is showing close. I've just used a workflows. I just used a workflow here. Nothing, I have added any conditional statement or a loop statement, anything here. So let's see how it goes. You can see the status here. Yep, my verification is passed. If the false equal values. So this is the default message which is given by this particular verification expression with operator property. If this file is exist, then we should be worried because your functionality is not working. So this is how you can perform your unit test cases, because this is very easy. There's a very simple few clicks. You can develop your own test cases and you can reuse this unit test case while building for the QA scenarios also. So my best way or my suggestion would be, whenever you are working on any RPA project, build as many as unit test case as possible for positive scenario, negative scenario, neutral scenario, anything. Please do create unit test cases to check your test, your functionality, efficiency, and performance. Okay, let's just close this one. Now, if you see my files is in this unit testing file is in the business workflow. So let me drag and drop and keep it in the unit test case. Again, this is the code maintaining purpose. So now the real action. This is the functional test case. Let me just create a functional test case for SAP login, because unit test case we already checked for the deleting. Now let's just check for the functional test case for SAP login. Click create a test case. Give functional test. Since it's a functional test case, FT001 SAP login. Now, as I said, given is where you collect all the input. So again, go back, copy it here, because my requirement says, sorry, my requirement here says in config is a mandatory. So to get this in config one, you need to get this file. You need to reuse this init all settings file. Import let's make it global. Now, if you click import arguments, there is an in username password. Now I'm not interested in passing this optional value, so I just pass this one. Mandatory field is in config. From there, I'm going to get this operators thing. Okay, now finally the verification part. So to verify that, because I need to verify after login, I need to get the screen to capture, right? So let's just run this file. Let's see how it goes. Yep, it's successfully logged in. Now I need to check use application browser. Don't get confused here, just hold a sec. Now I'm looking for the screen. check application access, app state, sorry, check app state. I'm just looking for this create sales document. So if this particular element is exist on the screen, then this is a suitable login successful condition. Okay, let's just give a 5 seconds, just wait for the 5 seconds to log in. If target appears, I'm just going to create where login status is true. If you find this element, then login status is true. It's false for the login status is not. Okay. Now here comes the verify expression operator. Now, if where login status is true, then go to properties. You will see this section, take screenshot if fail. If this condition fail, take a screenshot. Usually in a evidence submission for the UAT or QA testing, anything, you will go with the evidence proof. So it will capture the screenshot of the last execution part and you can submit as an evidence. But you run successfully, the test case was successful, or test case your failure, anything. But as a best practice, I would suggest please take screenshot for success condition also, so that you can submit more evidence, as well as it won't skip any screen capturing. You have proof if it's successful and you have proof if it is a fail. Now for alternate verification title, as a best practice, always give a user-friendly error message. Since this is a login, let me just check login success or not. And my output message format, usually we used to get the system generated default message, right? So now if you want to give more meaningful message, if you hover here, UiPath automatically gives you the proper error way, right? So let's just, why don't we go with this one? Left expression, right expression, result operator. Like, just go with this one. Expression, operator as result. I'm just giving a normal name here, but if you want to follow, you can hover and you will get the error message properly here. Okay, let me just log out here. Try it again. Okay, my execution completed. True operator has true. So there is some, sorry, there is some. So now I corrected, so it will give a proper name here. So this way you can develop your own functional test cases. So to just save our times, I have already worked out some of the test cases here. You can just give a look here. And here. So these are the workflows which I have already developed, the given section, and I have added some if conditional statements, etc., etc. I've worked out all here. You need to just connect to your test manager. Just a minute, sorry for the delay. Okay, now once you develop these test cases with all the best practices you follow, you just need to take additional step. As a tester, I need to take a step. Here, go to test manager. If you are using a Studio Pro, you can see this test manager thing. Go to the test manager. First, make sure your Studio Pro is connected to your test manager. For that, go to test manager settings. If you see here, you can see your test manager URL is in connected stage. Let me just disconnect and connect again and search for my project. Yep. Now I have connected. Now I need to connect these test cases with the test cases developed by the or created by the admin inside this test manager. That's how your admin or a QA lead will get to know this. You developed an automation for the or you developed a test case for the description, and she can able to test it or use it. So first step, deleting existing file is my first test case I need to connect. Go to this one, test manager, link to test, and you need to find your name here. So this is SAP deleting files, right? So SAP deleting files, it's SAP 18. Yep, the number matched. Let's just click OK. Yep, now once you connected to the test manager, you can see this connection. And if you click open test, it will directly navigate you to that page where you link your automation. And the same you repeat for the SAP login also. Go to there, link to the test, SAP login, press OK, save it, and finally link to test. Okay, I have linked all my test cases here. Now my next step would be publish these test cases to the orchestrator. And one more thing you need to remember, before you publish it, make sure your test cases are in a publishable mode. Like I just created this unit test case. So if you right click here, you will see this option set as publish. You need to click this option set as publish. Once you click, that option will disappear and you will see this set as draft. Without this set as publish clicking or activating, you cannot publish your test cases to the orchestrator. So now what I'm going to do is just, without clicking the icon, if you click this arrow down, you will see this publish test cases. Just publish your test cases. Next, publish. It might gonna take a while. Yep, test successfully, my version number 833915. Okay, go to the orchestrator. Now go to the process. Go to the folder. That way it is easy. Okay, now let me add a job which I just published. SAP Yes. So this is my project. You can see the version number and yep, create it. Oh, it's saying it's already deployed. So let me remove it. And add a new. Yep. And go to the testing tab. There you will see UFN process. So in the test case set tab, create a name, select the environment, so you can see your process. And you will see this multiple test case. Forget about it. Just remember, I'm just going to publish or select the selected test cases here. Because I tried before this demo, I tried multiple times for the checking connections. So please don't get confused along with that. So for now, FT00456 is my namings. 4 and 5, 6. Let's just create. Now this is my test set. This test set contains the test cases. Test set is nothing but a combination of test cases. Now go to the test cases, or in the test set itself, you can start your execution. So before starting execution, let me just clear the system. Hit the run button. Now once you published, orchestrator work is completely admin job or a developer's job to work here. Now my bot is just started test cases one by one. You can see the status under test execution tabs. Now my bot just executed. Yep, first thing is passed. And now we're going to the second one. Yep, my second one is also completed. You can see the status after completing the third one. And please remember, your test case should be unique and should not dependent on any other test cases. You cannot call one test case from the other test case. That is not the best practices you can follow, because that will create a dependency to run. That will become a chaos when you run a test set. Okay, let's see. Now my 3 test cases is passed. Let's just go to your test manager and go to the test sets tab. Link your test set. Okay. Oops, sorry. Test set. Or second. But you can see the status here, like on daily base or weekly base. You can, if you want to see the test execution, you can see here each test cases, whether it is passed or failed or anything. You can check it here in the dashboard panel. Let me just pull this one. Since the test cases gave a proper naming like 18, 19, 20, you created in this order, the test cases also will execute in the same order. But please remember, if the sequence order is not the same way as your process goes, this will create a wrong way of execution. So you can directly execute from here, or you can just go ahead and see the status. So you can see the latest results. 4 minutes ago we have executed, the latest results is passed. It will automatically pull from everything from the orchestrator. So this is how you can maintain, this is how you can develop your unit test case or a functional test case from the admin perspective. At the same time, you can check the status, or you can submit your evidence accordingly. Everything you can see it here. I think the information is still not completed. Okay, see, whatever you executed from the orchestrator, you see the status here. So click it, and for the individual, you can see the status of the individual test cases and the screenshot it captured, screenshot of the login file. And this is the file which I said you can submit for the evidence. And this is the screenshot. Okay, I haven't captured the screenshot for this one. Cool. So this is how you can follow your building. These are the steps you can follow while building your test cases. And I hope I have answered how to start your building the test cases. Now, there are best practices you need to follow while you are developing. Since we have already discussed something, I would like to repeat some of the functionalities here. First thing, test case should be independent. As I just mentioned, one test case should not call from the other test case. Consider you wanted to call a login first, like login required deleting existing file in our scenario. So you might thought, so why don't I call this existing file inside this one? No, you should not call one test case from the other test case. It will create dependencies while you're running from the orchestrator, because once you hit this button, execute button, you don't have any control how the test case should run. So if you have any dependency from one test case to other test case, it will, if the test case it called failed, your entire test cases will show the status as a failed one. So make sure you haven't called one test case in the other test case. And workflow should be separate based on the given, when, then. That is one of the most important best practices. So you might thought, why don't I call inputs from the when section? No. So that's why the reason we have classified these three things: when, then, and given sections. So input should be read from the given, and when should be where the functionality calls, and then should be is a place where the verification should start. So as I first mentioned, create as many as unit test cases based on positive and negative results, so you can improve your efficiency over the process. So, and one more thing, in verification login, always give a proper alternative user-friendly name or proper user-friendly error message or verification message you say, so that when you read your logs, it will give you a proper way. I mean, the log itself will show how the execution completed. So go to this one. Yeah. Now I haven't created a much, but if you can add as many as log possible, that will give you a clear picture of how your bot ran successfully. So these are some of the best cases, best practices you can follow. And one more thing I forgot, sorry. So always keep your test cases or test cases thing surrounded by the try catch, because you might not know, sometimes the system failure happens or environmental breakdown or system breakdown might happen. In such scenario, you can avoid the wrong status sending to the test manager. Okay, that's it from my end. These are some of the best practices you can follow, and over to you, Vijay.